behind enemy lines.
Hey there, how you doing, America? Gene Baradelli here with you with a breaking exclusive interview. On the line with me right now, fresh off of questioning FBI Director Comey, Congressman Jody Hice of Georgia. Sir, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Gene. Great to be with you.
It's a pleasure to have you on, and the timing for a small little nothing show like me couldn't be any better than to have you come on right after your questioning of Director Comey in the committee hearing that's taking place this week. Let's talk about the line of questioning that you took that I was actually able to watch beforehand in talking about whether or not there is a double standard between what Administration of Justice there would be for an ordinary person what Secretary Clinton received in the FBI recommendation.
Right. I think.
Are you convinced, based on your discussion with him, that there is no double standard?
I'm not convinced. He stated very clearly that had this been an average person in the State Department or the FBI or an anonymous contractor or someone of the like, that they would have at least received significant discipline, if not criminal charges. In fact, he said they would not have received criminal charges, but they would have received significant discipline. And so when shifting from there to say and to ask him if he believed Secretary Clinton should have been disciplined, he could not answer, would not answer, whatever the case. And to me, that again, that highlights that we are dealing with a Justice Department right now that is exhibiting a double standard. If you are a Clinton or someone of notoriety, there is the distinct, real possibility that you're going to be above the law.
And he seemed to create a loophole in his answers to you of if you are no longer an employee of the State Department and you are found to have been, quote-unquote, extremely careless, then there really is no punishment that can be meted out in that particular situation. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, I think the assessment is probably accurate from a legal perspective, but I don't agree with it from a practical perspective. If someone has broken the law and compromised the national security of the United States, there needs to be some accountability for such. And in this case, we have classified material that was being transferred on a private, unsecure server. Who knows who, if anyone, has been able to obtain that information. But yeah, I mean, practically speaking, if the national security of the United States is compromised, there ought to be accountability to that, regardless of who the individual was who was responsible.
And I think that you would agree that regardless of intention, because the way that the felony statute for the secrecy law is as written doesn't have the element of intent to it. Do you believe that the FBI is making up new law?
Well, I don't know that they're making up new law, but again, your argument of intent, I agree. The reality is whether Secretary Clinton's intention was to compromise national security or not is irrelevant to the fact that she knew better. She was not to have a private server in the basement of her home. It was not to be set up as the way she had it set up, and she knew better. And so whether she intended ill or not, she knew better, and there ought to be consequences for that.
And in fact, at least in my opinion, and maybe this is a singular opinion, the act of setting up the server, to me, is indeed an intentional act to remove information from protected areas within the State Department. To me, that seems like a no-brainer if you want to find intent. Would you agree with that?
Sure. I mean, that's exactly what it all comes back to. She knew what she was doing. She was, even in the director's own words, she was at least extremely reckless in this. Her behavior was extremely careless, and she should have known better. In fact, she did know better. And so I just find it unbelievable to even think that in this circumstance there would not be consequences for risking our national security.
Absolutely. Now, we haven't really gotten political in the discussion. We've kind of kept it limited to the goings-on in Congress. I do want to get into one point of perception with regards to Congress, and it was brought up during the hearings by a fellow member of your committee, talking about confidence in government. Do you feel that Americans are justified in having a crisis of confidence when it comes to the federal government, especially in light of what we saw this week with Director Comey's recommendation?
Well, sure. I think that's what sparks the lack of confidence in government. We see things like this where all appearances, at least the optics, if not the reality of the situation, gives the appearance at least that Lady Justice has taken the blinders off of her eyes and she is choosing to determine who must abide by the law and who is able to get away with breaking the law. And it's these type of things that create great anger and anxiety, and rightfully so, among the American people. We are to be a land of justice for all, and that's exactly why Lady Justice has the blinders on. We are to be impartial as to who it is that is facing the law and the consequences thereof. And when things like this happen, it creates a great angst among the American people, and very understandably so.
To hear the full interview with Congressman Jody Hice, tune in next week to Behind Enemy Lines.